All right, we do have a best of 5 grand finals here for the European Open Cup. In the top right, it is Clem versus Lambo, who spawns in the bottom left. Shopify Rebellion versus Team Liquid. Now, Clem did just have a smooth run through a couple of Protosses. He looks very, very good. I expect he will look as good versus Lambo, considering that this is the matchup that we all know him for. Even though, as of right now, I believe his Liquid score, his TvZ is his worst. Very quote-unquote on that. It's still pretty good. It's still one of the best in the world, I would say, especially when it comes to mid-game aggression. But it's just that he has been winning against a lot more Protoss, because there are a lot more Protoss, and also the Protoss that he faces are ones you expect for him to win. And the matchup's kind of difficult for Protoss right now. Whereas the Zergs are just super limited in availability. Lambo being one of the ones who actually signs up for the Open Cup. There are some other Zergs who sign up, but I'm talking about people who could get to like top 4 or top 8 even. Lambo is one of the few Zergs. Otherwise, it's just full of a bunch of Protosses. Clem's TVT is also leveled up quite a bit. He faces very high quality opponents with TVT, like Hero Marine and Spirit often, but he also is winning against them really often. So I think it has less to do about the actual, like, well, what is he truly best at, and more about the circumstances that give the data, right? But that's not super important. The point is, Clem is very good in this matchup. We do expect him to win versus Lambo most of the time. And the only time it doesn't happen is when Lambo is playing at his absolute best. I said it in the last series, I'll say it again. I think if Lambo plays his absolute best, then he's one of the best Zergs in the world, as in like top 4 Zergs. If he's not playing his absolute best, let's say 80% or lower, I would put him more in like, you know, kind of like a general top 10 or something like that, which, if I really sat down and wrote out all of the Zergs, I'm sure I could specify further or whatever, but I'm just kind of generalizing here. And Lambo, you know, like most people in their daily lives, can't necessarily perform at 100% every single time. So when he does perform very well, I think it's him being aggressive and just having more tenacity and controlling Clem more. That's when you go, oh shoot, okay, Lambo's playing really well. We'll see whether or not he has a chance at this best of 5, probably with the first push. In the first push, Clem moves out with whatever he does, 16 Marines, 2 tanks, I don't know. And Lambo has a less than stellar cleanup. We kind of already know the rest of the best of is gonna show. If he has a decent cleanup, then it'll probably be a couple of tight moments, but ultimately Clem 3-0. If he bops it, he presses the bop button, then I have a lot of hope for Lambo. By the way, I don't know if I just never have noticed before, but queens with red are kind of freaking me out right now. The talons on their front are so red, like pink. Also, queens have mohawks. Did you guys know that? I swear I'm not high. So we have a 3cc set up for Clem, and then a 1-1-1 afterwards, but not a very safe 1-1-1. It is just the Hellions and Liberators, his Reaper, and now 2 Hellions doing the job of scouting. They see consistent drone production, and as such are not worried about any surprise roaches. Lambo absolutely can go for such a thing, but he is less prone than, for instance, the likes of Dark or a laser. So it's usually a safe bet that Lambo will get into 4-base setup. Then it's much more up in the air whether or not Lambo plays like a very light gas style or very heavy gas style, really wants to go into the late game or wants to overpower the Terran player in the mid game. I think that is the that is the choice that I am looking forward to the most. Because if he does choose to go into that light gas, large number of Ling Baneling, then I actually think he has the most potential. If he goes into, let's say, a just solid defensive 4 or 5 base setup to try and get into lurkers, there's still potential, but I don't know. I think that gives Clem a lot of room to play around, basically. Clem is not the type of Terran who's going to say, okay, everything's fine, let me just go ahead and passively build up. He's going to go, oh, everything's fine, let me show off. Let me micro every which way. Let me multitask a billion different ways around you. So Clem now just going for some harassment, moving on to the barracks at this point. 3rd CC is on location. I was going to say, did it build in location? No. SCVs weren't rallied. And Lambo moves on to a 4th base. All's fair. Nothing really truly important has happened. Just talking about the expectations of the series. Clemo has gone into double upgrades, getting up to, let's see here, 4 gases right now. That's it. We say some 4 gases, we could have a lot of that Ling Bailing aggression. Certainly going to be well prepared for the first move out. Now, if Clem commits, which he's not going into tanks, he's going into Wood Mines. If he does move out with his entire army, there will be an escape path. It'll be more mobile. And then Lambo could overwhelm him. But that's the thing, is that if Clem plays this style of play, he's usually pretty flexible with it. He'll pick up, he'll leave. He'll let Lambo wear himself out. Two medevacs to start off this portion of the TvZ. Second factor on the way for Clem, so also a 4th command center will be underway too. No 8 racks all in for us here today. Marines probably should not stay around for very long. They didn't have combat shields and they were out upgraded. Lambo's +1 carapace was done, his +1 melee just finishing as well. So Clem not going to find very much with 16 Marines or less. Lambo is setting up for a lot of Ling Bailing production. He still is only on 4 gases, yet going up to a 4th hatch, 5th hatch, and a 6th hatch as his macro hatch. That's a lot of hatches. That's a lot of larva production. His creep spread also not looking too bad at all. On the right side in particular, it goes well. Now, he is lacking some creep spread on the very right, where his 4th base is. And Clem is going to find an avenue of attack unnoticed by Clem. But it looks like Lambo is at least anticipating it. He had already started to section off his defenses, left and right, expecting this type of play from Clem, and it was a good call indeed. I'm a little scared about the lack of banelings on the left side, but again, it is only this drop. Well, here comes some more reinforcements. Upgrades have evened up, but there's a lot more banelings, so concerns are not necessary. Lambo is totally fine. Yes, he's totally fine. No Wood Mines popping off on his banelings. The lack of baneling speed would be concerning if this was more of a push, something that was going to kind of stick around, anchor itself somewhere, and then Lambo had to really size up how to defend against it. But in terms of just having enough army to split around, as long as you are not caught with only 1 or 2 banelings, right? And so Clem snipes it. I would say Lambo is fine. On the left side, those Wood Mines appeared and I think kind of screwed up Lambo's initial defense. He had to split what looked to be very last second and haphazardly, so Clem's split was actually looking better. Now that the roly-poly is done, it should be a lot easier to handle these things. Just 5 banelings probably on either side of the drop and you're good to go. The next problem for Lambo would be, 1, making sure that he doesn't catch Clem, or that he does catch Clem building up his army into 1 big army push, and 2, actually getting on the other side of the map. So Lambo doesn't want to be overwhelmed because he thinks, oh, it's only a drop over to the right side. Oh, wait, it's the whole entire army. You don't want to have that happen. But then the next thing that you want to have happen in Lambo's position is an actual opportunity to attack. Right now, Lambo has been nothing but defensive. He is working his way onto his 2-2 upgrades, and that's fantastic, but of course, no Infestation Pit, no Hive, no additional technology. This will only get you so far as a third player. Well, it's supposed to only get you so far. Clem has shown some weakness in the past couple of weeks in those regionals against some of the aggressive mid-game Zergs, a laser in particular giving him far more trouble than any of us anticipated, pushing Clem to the limit, pushing Clem to a game 5. So Lambo might be hoping to mimic that again. Now, the thing about that is that, well, yes, a laser's over-the-top aggression might have been just that slightly different pacing that catches Clem off guard. It also was apparent that Clem wasn't playing his absolute best for the first 3 games. His first 2 games were really not Clem-like, and then the 3rd game was kind of getting there, and the 4th and 5th were way more convincing. So what Lambo is doing is maybe trying to take advantage of that mid-game aggression, trying to kind of get Clem offset, you know, like, oh wait, no, he's going to punch me, he's not going to punch me, what's going to happen here? But then he might also kind of be hoping that Clem's playing a little bit worse, just like he did versus the Zergs in the regionals, both a Laser and Wayne. A couple of Widowmines pop off and take the wind out of that particular attack, so that's not going to work out. However, the Planetary went down. Hello! I thought Clem had units over there, but apparently not. They went racing over to the left side looking for a bit of tit for tat, but that's a Planetary versus just a hatchery. We know hatcheries are cheaper. Clem really wants to have a 4th base up and running. His 5th currently stalled out as well. His attack will, in fact, get this base. I was going to say, it probably should. But then he's going to need more than that. 1 hatchery down, 2 hatcheries down would make up that Planetary loss. And perhaps most importantly, just good trades. Lambo gave a lot of Ling Bailing to kill that Planetary, which if he survives the immediate counterattack, more power to him. But that is the problem right now. He's lost a hatchery, he's losing out on Lings, he's losing out on supply, he cannot stabilize. And while he cannot stabilize and is under all this pressure, Clem is rebuilding back at home. His 4th and his 5th command centers will finish up here. His upgrades continue on. His army supply currently doubling that of Lambo's. It turns out, well, that Planetary looked like a decent attack. I mean, it worked. It killed the Planetary, right? We go like, oh, yeah, fireworks. It wasn't really worth the cost of the army. Lambo was not at that point in which he was so overwhelmingly in control of the game. Creep spread out the wazoo. Ling Bailing reinforcements coming in from 100 larva and 2,000 in the bank. He wasn't at that point. So the choice to kill a Planetary is a really difficult choice to make. And can sometimes be the wrong choice. Even if it looks like the freest thing in the world, we just, you know, Bailings are suicidal. And unfortunately, that seems to be what's happened here. Lambo was okay in terms of supply, economy, and creep spread up until that Planetary hit. But then the Planetary went down, and so did Lambo's army supply. This particular attack also not able to actually kill a lot of those Marauders. That was Lambo's last hurrah. And there wasn't much hurrah to it. Clem with a 1-0 start in this best of 5. All together now, watching that game happen, sub 13 minutes, I have now supreme confidence that Clem is going to win this best of 5. That was unfortunately the Lambo I was hoping not to see, which is just basically, you know, running through the motions, not doing a bad job necessarily, but nothing really exciting, nothing really like, oh my gosh, that's, you know, that was a really good move, and this was so close to killing him, and so on. And it's game 2 on Ancient Cistern. In the bottom left, it is Clem up 1-0. Lambo in the top right. Just didn't really have that much of a punch. And even the punch that he had was kind of deceiving. You thought it was a knockout punch. Thought it was a haymaker out of left field. And Clem would be all a dizzy afterwards because of it. But actually, it was almost like a feint. It's almost like Clem let Lambo punch him in the face because he knew it wouldn't hurt that much, and Lambo would hurt his own hand further, you know? There's really not a perfect analogy for, you know, the Planetary being killed but not being effective, but you get what I'm getting at, all right? Lambo chose to kill a significant portion of Clem's economy, but at the sacrifice of his army, which then could not stand up to Clem's army, especially as Clem was getting into a thick double C army that was going to soak up a lot of Baneling shots and make the engagements a little bit more difficult, a little bit more complex to take on, rather than just, you know, 30 Marines, hope 2 Banelings connect. So Lambo might mix it up because of that way that played out. Not going to go into the simple Ling Baneling once again. He could change it into a Roach game. He could change it into a Fast Hive game. He could change it into an all-in or a Cheese. but I'm not sure I'm really feeling that here on Ancient Cistern. For Clem, he's going to keep up his scouting and once again go into his 3rd CC build by the looks of it. He does love 3 CCs. And if he does scout perfectly, then more power to him. Theoretically, you can get yourself out of any situation if you scout far enough ahead in time. And that's one thing that Clem usually does. There are some players in multiple matchups and multiple races that decide that scouting isn't... Not that it's not as important, but just like they don't emphasize it as much. So, for instance, Showtime not scouting with his probe in PvT. That's a little abnormal, but he does it. Or... Well, Zergs don't really scout. You know, but okay, or Zerg not sending an Overlord in suicidally. They just literally leave it over here and never get close to the front. That's something that some Zerg players do. Some Terran players, you know, they do not go into a Reaper at all. They just skip it. And they depend on maybe an SEV scout? Maybe. Or they depend on the first 2 Hellions, which is a little bit more room for a clever all-in. Clem, no, almost always goes into the Reaper, and then immediately following up with the 2 Hellions as well, likes to be aggressive. There is a moment then, if Lambo was going for the quickest speed, that if Clem shoots over his Reaper and first 2 Hellions, that then, let's say 10 Lings get into the natural. But it seems like Clem just never has that happen to him. Or if it does happen, it's really not worth it for the Zerg players. The Zerg players just don't even bother. And in this case, speed is really not fast at all. Haymaker out of left field. Popular term in base boxing, which should definitely be a thing. Oh, it's a Raven opener. Okay, I haven't seen Clem do this too often. Overlord's gonna get in and see that there is something building from a Tech Lab starport, but it won't... No? Hold on. It actually... Ravens build pretty fast now. That cloak was just a little bit too late to be a convincing fake, plus the Raven might be spotted. Oh my god, that was really close. Okay. Well, anyways, like I said, that cloak timing was a little fake looking. Now, I'm not 100% certain about this, and Lambo also can't be 100% certain, but cloak would have already been on the way, I think. Soon enough, he'll see the Raven. So he'll know for sure. It looks like he didn't really overreact to the would-be Banshees anyways. 0 Spore Crawlers in position. So I think he did kind of feel that one out, and now he's rewarded for it. He will lose an Overlord, I guess, so not exactly rewarded. But he's, you know, he's not overreacting. Still going to build 3 Spore Crawlers, actually. And you can't spread them later on to help out against drops, but I'm a little surprised by that. Seeing as it was only a Raven, I would have expected maybe 1 or 2. To try and deter it from hitting your mineral lines, but okay. That's a lot of Hellions, and now with the auto turret involved as well, the Queens are in a little bit of danger. They're also off creep, so they couldn't transfuse. That was just a mistake from Lambo there. I think he could have pulled back a little bit faster. Maybe not. Lots of denied time on the 4th base, because that was absolutely Lambo's intention. So he loses a Queen, loses some creep spread, and he loses access to a 4th base by about 10 or 15 seconds, something like that. If he has to cancel it, that would just be sucky. I don't think... Oh my gosh, he has to cancel it. Wow. Yeah, and the drone dies. Oh, such a big delay on the 4th base. Which is going to have that ripple effect, isn't it? It's going to be later to the larva, and later to... Well, that's basically it. But later to the larva, later to the mining, later to the building of enough units to survive, so on and so forth. Clem completely untampered with back at home. 3 bases set up, lickety-split, saturation going down, nothing about to hit this SCV line that is oh so vulnerable. As Lambo continues to just drone and defend, right? So he's not building an army to counterattack with. This is the type of game that gives Clem the wiggly jigglies. He gets all excited, he can do whatever you want. Kind of. Lambo is going to go into a Hydralisk Den after getting much more gas. He's up to 6 gases. You'll be looking at Hydras and eventually into Lurkers if he'll live that long. Right now, he's having a bit of that larva issue. He's also going to have a supply block issue. He has 1 larva, guys. That is because he just built 16 lings, but that's not a lot. He still has 1,000 minerals in the bank. That late 4th hatchery really having a snowball effect here. Clem did jump the gun a little bit with his Marines before the medevacs were ready to go, so that's why they're really injured, which means that, especially without combat shields being done, the Queens could even start tackling them, but the tank gets taken down first and foremost. Probably a good move there from Lambo. He's still in trouble. Combat shields will eventually finish. More army could be reinforcing. And Lambo still doesn't have enough larva to actually build as much army as he would like. I don't know where I was going with Arva. I just completely lost the L. But yeah, it's the larva problem. Lambo will be able to fix the larva problem should he make Hydras and Lurkers, then that would absolutely be fine. But he doesn't really want to add Hydras to a very early stage of defense, I would say. Because, you know, you add in a couple of Hydras, they're not properly protected. They're just a bit of a waste of money as they get left all by their lonesome and ripped and torn to shreds. You don't want that. So he is holding on to the production, but I think he can only hold on for so long. At the very least, continuing to build Queens would be a good move. It looks like Lambo is he's just caught in too bad of a situation. He can't even really roll himself out of this one. 22 drones have gone down as both sides are being attacked. Clem with an even more convincing game number 2 victory. And what is potentially the last game here on Dragon Scales. In the bottom right, it is Lambo. In the top left, it is Clem. Clem just, I would say going through the motions and winning, but it's not exactly accurate, because I could say that Lambo's also going through a lot of the motions. Well, last game, that 4th base denial was big. But the first game, I would say that they both went through the motions. Nothing was particularly shocking or inspiring, you know? There was no super cool micro, something like that, But Clem went through the motions cleaner, didn't he? So, these aren't the games that I think are testing either of them, testing their utmost skill in the matchup. Lambo is not playing at his best, and Clem is not playing against someone at his best, which would encourage him to play at his utmost best, you know what I mean? But, with both of them kind of just, I don't know, playing, it's like, Clem is obviously the one that's better. I don't necessarily want to put it this way, but it's kind of almost like there's not a whole lot of feeling here, you know? There's not a lot of, you know, stakes on the line and impressive narratives and all that. It feels like there was, at the beginning of the series, there was hope, there was optimism, there was, you know, Lambo could do really well, Clem could mess up, TvZ's an awesome matchup, so on and so forth. And then we saw the game unfold, and it's like, oh, okay, that wasn't really all that much. And the second game was even worse, and now it does feel like we're kind of going through the motions to give Clem the victory. That's just how convincing the relatively short and uneventful games are going. So, gotta call a spade a spade sometimes, right? That's what they say in poker or gardening. But no, it doesn't seem to be like a lot of what ifs. So I don't know what Lambo's thinking now. He did change things up for the last game, but it went even worse. So the only thing I could think that would be a drastic difference would be a roach play. And the roach play isn't just to say he did something differently. The roach play can be effective against Clem because he is such a mid-game oriented player. And roaches are also rather powerful in the mid-game, should you be shooting for the 1-1 roach all-in, right? So that kind of takes the power away from Clem in his arguably best position in TvZ, the mid-game position, the drop everywhere, Widowmines popping off, so on and so forth, fourth position. You make the guy sweat a little bit, defend more often, kind of skip over the mid-game to a certain extent, and at least the game in its entirety is different. And I think that's why Dark can also sometimes do very well against Clem. But Lambo is playing the type of game that I think Clem really does find not necessarily easy, but is very comfortable against. So if Clem's comfortable, it's not usually a good thing. Watching this Reaper continue to dance around, because once again we have a Clem 3cc build and Lambo going into 3 hatch, so this is the excitement right now. Can the Reaper get any more kills? 3 kills so far, all 3 on Lynx. Lambo's gonna have to replace some. He already did replace 1 pack at least. No, it's going to be a Banshee build. It's going to be cloaked Banshees as well, so it's a little bit safer. But it also, I would say, with the the way the last two games went, I have a lot more faith in the Banshee Hellion opener doing a lot of damage too. Usually, TvZ against the top tier pros, right? Banshees aren't supposed to do a whole lot. There is a difference of Raynor's perfect anticipation and defense around all of the attack paths of the Banshees, so they literally do nothing. And, okay, I slipped up and let the drones take a couple of shots, but mostly they don't do a whole lot. But if the games have been going the way they have, and the series is overall feeling kind of dim, then the Banshee Hellion micro from Clem is just going to add on to the micro that we saw last game with a Raven and Hellions, you know? So this actually makes me kind of scared for Lambo, which it's just, it's an indicator of how the series has gone, that I would be scared for a professional Zerg player up against a 3cc Hellion Banshee build. And I know that might also sound like I'm not giving Lambo a whole lot of credits and I'm a Lambo hater and stuff like that, but I'm really not. It's just one of those things where TvZ being so mechanical and it being kind of I think one of the best matchups to really say this player's better, this player's worse today. There's less what ifs, there's less complications, I guess. Yeah, if Lambo's not performing in game 1, performs even worse in game 2, I'm not expecting different things in game 3. I would expect a different day to yield different results. If Lambo and Clem played again tomorrow, I'd be totally on board the hype train. I'd be talking about Lambo's spectacular matches and some of his other TvZs and how good of a player he can be and how Clem's been having trouble and so on and so forth. I'd be saying the same thing I said in the beginning of the series. We now have the hindsight of watching the series, and it is not going well for our Red Zerg, who so far is defending the Hellion Banshee, to be fair. The Banshees did get in, killed a couple of drones, but not a whole lot. But then Clem, once again, has nothing but peace on his side of the map. SCVs love their job. They never once get harassed. No manager looking over their shoulder. It's amazing. Where is the second Banshee? There she blows. There she is. Both of them quite injured, but alive, being repaired up. Useful later on for dealing with counterattacks. Clem goes up to a second factory, so again, going into a macro game. Fourth base will be on the way too. Lambo going into the double upgraded Lings once more, but this time he is significantly later to his upgrades. So I'm not sure what exactly happened or what exactly the difference is. It seems like otherwise his gas count... Oh, he's up to 5. He has gotten much faster Baneling speed, I guess is what it was, right? But his upgrades just seem like they were straight up late. They're very far behind Clem's. Compared to the first game, where he at least got that much going for him. This time around, Clem's first push is going to have all the upgrades, and Lambo will have none. Lambo will also have no supply to work with. He's building one Overlord. The reason he will be on supply block is because he's losing units. That's not what you want. Tank in a wonderful position to safeguard the Marines as they retreat. Lambo trying to get one hell of a surround, but Clem is onto it. He's keen to it. Combat shields isn't done, but if the Marines get into a pack and they burst down the Banelings, well, that's going to be it anyways. Yep. No combat shields necessary. There's the last few Banelings going down, and Clem with one of the fastest, quickest, cleanest 3-0s we have seen. Last week, he 3-0'd Showtime, but it took him a little while, and Game 3 was actually quite interesting. He has improved in the last week. This was a no contest best of 5 finals. GG's. Clem on point, Lambo not as much. It is what it is. Clem takes a 3-0. And another win under his belt. He gets closer to Hero Marines medal count.